I would say is solve the problem, right? And this is one thing my manager and myself used to banter about, which is any problem that you cannot solve with a spreadsheet first, like you cannot
Mm.
break things down and say, this is how I intend to solve the problem, this is how the solution will work. Bringing technology into it is only going to make matters worse, right? And a lot of founders don't recognize that you actually need to solve the problem before you implement the solution. Now, technology is how you get that solution and make it available to a lot of people at scale. That's where the technology part comes into it. But as a founder, solve the problem first.
Okay. So hello guys. How's everyone doing? Adebisi, how you doing, by the way?
I'm fine. Good. Yes, I'm good.
We you sure you're good?
I think so.
You're
I believe
managing.
so.
A bit. We have a special guest today. And I'm very excited, So Cornelius, how you doing? Hope you're good.
Great. Good to be
Yes.
here.
Now, I'm going to go out of the limb to say that, see, this conversation is going to be very interesting. I've known Cornelius for, do you know that I've probably known you for longer than I've known you? Does that make sense? Like, I've
What
known
do you
about,
mean?
I've known about Cornelius longer than I've known him. Jigga. Like, I've seen him, I've read about him longer than I said, okay, this is this person, Jigga. But I've not actually met him until last year. So it's interesting that I've known you for close to a year now, and I can say that he's someone that you should just listen to. He's someone that really understands a lot of things that he's done, and he's really a sponge. Like, he's someone that I know that if he wants to learn something, he'll learn it. And this conversation is going to be fun, right? But talking about things that I've read about Cornelius, there was this article that came in, I think around Tech About, and also in a Flutterwave's website concerning about your journey in tech. A lot of people, I'm sure, always want to get into tech, want to learn about, how do I become a software engineer? Can you just walk us through your journey? Like, how did you even become Cornelius? How did that happen?
So, well, I think the way I can describe it, or a good place to start the story from, would be my third year. I had this roommate back then, and we're just chatting about, oh, what are you doing? What do you want to do with your degree when you're done? And I was like, I want to do oil and gas, oil money. And the guy laughed. He was like, oil money, really? Okay. So we did a bit of analysis. He was like, how many pounds? First class. We tried to estimate. And by the time we did an estimation of possible first class graduates, it was like 70, 80 plus, not accounting for people who studied abroad. Just like first class chemical engineering guys in Nigeria. And I was like, okay, let's search for how many openings are there in the oil and gas space from the popular companies. And by the time we checked, they were not up to 20 for chemical engineers.
Whoa.
I couldn't sleep that night. I just stayed up just thinking about 3 years, really, and I'll come to discover this. So I had to pivot. At the time, I tried my hands on finance, started taking accounting classes, basic corporate finance, learned, the basics of valuation, all those things, right? And a part of me found it easy to do, but it was stressful, right? Crunching those numbers all the time was really stressful. I just figured, what if I could automate these things? And then that search led to, oh, you can use code to automate some of these things. Oh, really? How? So I picked up Python, and then I guess the rest is history. So Cowrywise was actually very interesting because there was this challenge they
Cowrywise
had.
was the first place you got.
Sorry?
You got in like a technical role. Cowrywise was the first place you got a technical role.
Yeah, where I got my first technical role. So kind of, I didn't apply to that role. That's the very funny, interesting thing. a couple of friends were doing a challenge, and because my friend was part of the team, he would come to me to review their idea. And the night before their final presentation, I was like, you know what? I don't think your presentation is nice. I think it can be better, right? The content is really good, but like the visuals are not really there. So I worked all night on the presentation, and then they came second. Razak was like, he wants to see the person who did this presentation. And all of them were offered internship. Razak met me, was like, oh, you'd like to offer me an internship also. That was how I got into
For context,
Carrywise.
guys, Razak is the CEO of Carrywise. So the
Yeah.
CEO of Carrywise basically saw his work and was like, "Okay, who is this person?"
So yeah, I got into Carrywise, learned a lot of things. At the time, my coding skills were not really strong, so I was more on the design side, visual design, with I think I used XD then, Adobe XD. Figma wasn't really popular back then, so
That's
we just
OG
used that
level.
to yeah, use that to prototype and all. And then engaging with different people, I just figured that maybe it's time to go back to this automation of a thing. I want to build things, right? Things in my head, I want to build them. And then from that experience, came back to school. My final year, I knew what I wanted to do, right? I wanted to work in an investment bank. But
Nice.
I didn't want to leave Nigeria at the time
See,
for weird
I knew
reasons.
that we linked. Chike, that was my investment banking was. If I was not doing this whole thing, investment bank. That's what I would do.
So yeah, it was like investment banking, but I didn't want to leave Nigeria for personal reasons at the time. So I was looking, okay, what investment banking is hiring, engineers or technologists at the time. And I just reached out to lots of people. A lot of them ghosted me, like a lot of them ghosted me. But luckily, I heard back from the head of technology at Meristem, and he gave me the advice that made me pivot to fintech. He was like, investment banks don't build their technology, right? They buy technology from, the UK, US, or India even, and then they get one guy to like just maintain the technology, and the guy is not really doing much. So even if you eventually get hired, you're not going to grow as much. Like you won't learn a lot of skill sets. What you're going to be doing is just going to be maintenance work. Do you want that? Like, no. So it's like, do fintech. Fintech is new, it's exciting. There is a lot of work to be done in that space, and then you would, you know, potentially find things that are exciting for you or even challenging enough for you to want to dedicate a lot of your time to. And I was like, okay, let's try fintech. At the time, in my mind, I didn't know anything about the fintech space. I was like, okay, fintech, what's fintech? What's it about? Then a friend reaches out to say, hey, Cornelius, are you doing anything? I'm like, no. It's like, there's this team you need to work with. Like, they are young, they're energetic, they're moving fast. They are everything we hoped to be when we're in school. I'm like, guy, you've come again. You're hyping people. It's like, no, really, you'd like them. So he sends the link. Initially, I didn't apply. The deadline for the application closed, and he came back. He's like, "We've not seen your application. Oh, God, apply!" And then he gave me another link, and I applied. Turned out to be Flutterwave.
Oh,
Met the first person, and the person made a huge impression on me. Right, she's one of the senior engineers. Right, she's an engineering lead currently, but she made such an amazing impression on me. I was like, okay, if this is just one of the engineers here, I need to see who the boss is here. Right, and then I met GB. And it was the weirdest. I'm telling you, that was the weirdest interview I've ever had because I went there preparing for questions like, okay, it's a chat with the CEO. I want to talk to the CEO. And I got there and Jibi's like, oh, what's your name? Oh, you're Cornelius. You look like a Cornelius. I'm like, what?
what?
And the next thing he says is, you interview me. I'm like, I've heard different interview questions. I've never heard of that. Like,
Wow.
I should interview the CEO. I was caught off guard, but we had a nice chat, basically. It wasn't a long chat, very brief chat. And that was how I joined the team. At the time, it was integration support. That team felt like, this meme where you come in, you're a newbie, and someone is in a dark room in a hoodie, just like writing
Yeah.
code. That's what it felt like. Like everybody there was working in at least three languages at the time. I mean, I was just I was just working with one. So that was how I joined Flutterwave. I came in and the team was really, really supportive. You had a lot of things to learn. You were not working on the same thing at the at different periods of time. We were working on different things. So it was like, okay, I think I like it here. Then my manager at the time was someone who encouraged us to just pick up as much work as you wanted to pick up, learn as much as you wanted to learn. Nobody would say you're asking like a dumb question. There were no dumb questions. There was no, Chinese wall back then. Anything you wanted to learn, you could learn it. Like how are banks integrated to Flutterwave, for example? Somebody would actually sit you down, explain these things to you. So it made it very, very easy for me to start to see what the fintech industry really was at the time. What were the strengths? What were the connections? Who were the popular players, key stakeholders in the industry? And that sort of changed my perception, right? At the time, I just came in because, someone said, you're going to be excited to work with these people. But coming in, seeing the kind of work, the access to information, what I learned on the role, it was like, okay, these guys are onto something here. I really like the vision, really love what they're doing. I want to roll up my sleeves and double down. And in the course of doing all of that, I found a unique problem that nobody was interested in solving. Right? And I was like, okay, you know what? I need to talk to my leaders about this. Spoke to my leaders. My manager at the time spoke to the head of engineering at the time, spoke to GB, and GB was like, you have a point. We need to solve this problem. And the solution to that problem actually led to my new role, right, as developer experience. So that's
Before we
kind
get
of
there,
how
yeah,
that's kind of how my work went.
when
In trying to learn things in Flutter, like I had to pick up multiple hats. There was a period where I had to support the sales team. So I did a bit of like sales engineering. There was a time where I had to do account management, technical account management. It was really crazy back then. But all of that just led to me finding the problem that I really cared enough to want to build something around it, really.
a couple of things really stood out to me, and I even have like a follow-up question. The first thing is that you always ask questions, which is really important. I think just being able to, and again, asking questions, people say that they're no dumb questions. And to be honest, just ask. You don't
Yeah,
know what the answer would be. Just ask first, and you'll be surprised what you can get out of that. The second thing I got was that you essentially put yourself out there. Like the Carrie White story is something I know Razak is really known for. Razak is really good at points. That's pretty much how the earliest team members in Kaiwa sort of came about. Like you have to just do something, and he wants that raw talent there, and you have to put yourself out there. You have to be doing something for you to even be noticed. And I think show your work. Just be showing your work, because
very
again,
important.
the people around you would see that. Obviously, it might not be the whole world, but people around you notice, and they always know that, oh, this guy is capable, or this guy has some good potential, and they can even recommend and say, okay, guy, come in. But I want to ask you because there's something you mentioned, which is you had the latest interview with GB. But what the first thing you mentioned in the interview say was that the first person gave you a very good impression. I wanted to know, like, what was the impression? Because I want to use that to get people.
So, what did you do?
What did the person do?
And before you answer that, like, actually, what did you do? You had the like weirdest, or no, I won't call it weird, but like a very different career trajectory. What did the person say? Actually,
So for me, I think it was the confidence, right? Growing up in a culture where young people are not expected to know so much, then coming into a team where young people actually are the ones at the frontier of change. It was a huge, massive
Mm.
cultural shock for me. Like that was the first thing I had to get used to. Like a young person is the one building this incredible solution that's going to connect people across the continent. So for me, I was like, oh, this is really impressive. It's really different. I mean, we all went to Nigerian uni. You couldn't ask a lot of questions. You are not allowed to know more than your lecturer in a particular topic on a particular field. But here I was where different people knew a lot of stuff about their niche area and they were all young. Like I was really, 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 really surprised when I came in and people are like, oh, it's my birthday today. How old are you? Oh, I'm just 23. I'm like, what? And this guy is like leading a lot of operations, and this person's like less than this age. This person's less than this age. I felt at home really. It felt like, oh, couple of peers.
Mm.
They were older people than myself, but like
Then
generally we were very,
compliance.
I don't know. Compliance people were actually very young. I had a couple of classmates that like worked in that team. Very young people at the time.
That was a joke, Sha. They're always in compliance. The other thing that really shocked me was the role of developer experience. I think you're the first person that I've seen with that particular, because it's not really, I don't know whether it's a common role generally, but I'm sure people, this might be the first time people are even hearing what's the developer experience. All right. So I don't know. And it's interesting because it came from a problem that you saw and it came from a gap that you obviously noticed, and it made sense to actually create that role. And obviously, because you're very cross-functional, you've done things in sales, you've done things in accounting, it, you could really speak to a business in ways that a typical engineer might find it difficult to relate with. So I want for the audience, like, what is that role? What does that role even mean in the first place, especially in the context of Flutterwave?
Wow. So a good way to think about developer experience would be to start with something that's more popular, like user experience, for example, right? You're building a product. How your users interact with the product is what you would typically call user experience, right? But you also need things to build the product. For example, you need access to a banking system. You need access to, depending on if you require those kind of services, something like geolocation, if you are doing delivery or that kind of thing. Now, there are banks that provide these services. On the bank's end, you are a user, but because they understand that there are different categories of users and user experience talks about the end user, any conversation around how you, the product manager, or you, the product team, is going to consume that technology or interact with the technology and all the different touch points and interactions around that is what would sum up as user experience. So we're thinking about how people who make products would use our technology really and the experience they would have. In that context, it's similar based on description, but because of the needs are different, the considerations involved are very different. For example, your user is not thinking about, oh, what's a good example I can use here? How do I get license? They're not thinking about licenses. They're not thinking about things like that. What they're thinking about is, oh, someone told me about cable. I need to sign up quickly. If I'm not able to sign up quickly, I'm out. If I come in, I need to understand what's going on so that I can make the best use of the app. If I don't, I would underutilize the app. And if anything happens to my money in the app, I'm coming for you guys' head, right? So those are like the major considerations that you might make. There will be other considerations, I'm sure, but these are some of the considerations. But for us, you need to leverage our payment systems, our payment technology. We need to start to think about how is your team going to handle fraud? How is your team going to handle risk? How are you going to mitigate some of those things? We have our own systems, but we are not going to necessarily encourage you to keep onboarding fraudulent customers who would keep trying to test the systems, of course. So that's one consideration. Although it might not fall within DX directly, but it's something that will come up during conversations, right? How are you going to integrate the systems? It's a very, very popular consideration for us. How quickly are you able to go from sign up to your first hello world, right? That's what we call it. You sign up today, you're able to access all the features on the platform, you're able to make your first API call, you're able to see the money move actually and say, okay, this is how things work, so that you can customize that flow to your own needs. How do we support customizations for you and your business? And then how do we make sure that we help you leverage as much of the features as possible, right? And by you, I'm talking about the technical side because I'm seeing Adebisi is smiling. The sales team would cater to Adebisi most times because, they would speak more of our lingo in terms of like, what are the terms and conditions of service? What are the things she needs to know about these features and all of that? I am talking with the technical guys, the guys who are actually writing the code. So how do these guys make use of the technology? How are they going to interact with different components? What tools do they need to make sure their lives are easy? So that's part of what DX is. A good way to think about all these things would be, how do I get the part of product, which is what the engineer is consuming, for the engineer in a way that the engineer understands and appreciates it so that they are able to complete their tasks.
I think that makes a lot of sense. I like the fact that you wanted to differentiate between you're actually talking to the engineers on the other side to make sure that their experience is much more better. Obviously, the sales team would sort of warm everything, try and close the deal, get the company in to make sure that you know they are the right fit. In this case, for Flutterwave. Do you have any interesting stories on uh, the clients that you've come across that sort of wowed you, maybe in terms
Stories.
of
Well, every client that comes in is interesting. I mean, that's one thing that made me roll up my sleeve. Every day I was doing something different. It was really exciting for me, right? You get to see the behind the scene of what people eventually see like months later, and you're like, oh, proud to be part of this or part of that. So yeah, everything was like really, really incredible. There is none that like stands out for me right now. So I'll just say all of them.
So I can understand that it's interesting because you're dealing with multiple businesses, you're dealing with different teams, so everything is changing constantly. So I like your job. Are you guys
Yeah.
hiring so I can join your team?
Yeah.
There's something I know that you're currently leading the team for developer experience. How has that been like for you over time? And in terms of like specific strategies that you're for yourself, like how do you structure that? Like what is the end-to-end strategy you're looking at when you're thinking of building that team and building like a good user experience for your clients?
So I'm just going to share how I approached it, right? This might not specifically work for everyone, but for me, I think the most important thing, and it's usually the hardest thing to achieve, is alignment with stakeholders, right? If you don't find that alignment, there's no other strategy that can help you because you're not on the same page. Your definition of success is different from what the business thinks success should be. And then it becomes very, very difficult for you to do any other thing. It becomes very difficult for you to do any initiative, to hire anyone you want to hire, because you can't justify those things to the business. So I think the first thing is get that buy-in, align with stakeholders. The second thing will be to really think about what is your biggest problem and what you can do in the short term to like kind of, you might not be able to solve it in the short term, but kind of mitigate the effects, right? And this is where a lot of people I have seen get frustrated, especially when you're building a new team. It's like, this is a problem. I want to solve it. But if you need to solve this problem and solve it well, it takes time. But in the interim, what can you do to mitigate? There's nothing done on that angle. It becomes painful for your users. You're spending a lot of time to solve it, By the time you eventually solve it, your users might not care anymore, right? So it's what is the biggest problem I need to mitigate for? Identifying that. How do I mitigate? Right. And mitigation should not mean you are giving up on the solution. No, it's just, you know, a little plaster, a band-aid on the cut while you actually prepare to take care of the issue. Outside of that, things that have worked for me will be documentation, which is weird for an engineer to say, right? There's this notion that engineers don't like to document, but I find it very helpful to document a lot of things. What I see things are my research that I've done, document all those things for future references. It makes it easier for conversations that would happen in the future, or it makes it easy for you to make a decision, right? You can refer to things that you documented to make those decisions. So getting that buy-in, as a recap, getting the buy-in, making sure you identify what your issues are, right? And what you can do to mitigate those issues, especially if you have very long timelines to resolve, and then documenting things. And I should add that all these strategies are they are not going to be important if you are not empathetic to your users or to your customers, right? I think customer is the right word here, whether they are internal customers or external. Anybody that derives value from you or from your work is a customer. So you have to be empathetic to them to understand their own unique situation. Okay, this is the reason why my leadership is going in this direction or thinking this way. And it's the reason why I need to deprioritize some things that I was excited about. Right. Okay, fine. I'm going to do that. This is the reason why some of the members of my community are thinking this way. This is the reason why they're agitated. I might need to prioritize some things or find a balance in between. Then you can now apply those strategies to help you.
You mentioned something around buying. I'm guessing you're trying to make sure that everyone is sort of aligned in this particular, or you're aligning everyone's interests basically to a particular goal. How are you looking at buying it? So, because I know that you're dealing with so many individuals or so many departments at the same
Yeah.
time. How do you even balance
So
interest?
I think it's hard, especially when people have different focuses that tend to clash. But one thing that helps is to establish some sort of baseline objective. What are we doing here? Why are we here? Everybody needs to be able to identify why we are even having this conversation in the first place, right? It doesn't mean you like it. It doesn't mean you support it. You understand. Then we can go from there to say, okay, this is why we're here. We have a developer community. We have developers who are not necessarily, quote unquote, this category of developers that will typically be aware of or will track. How do we take care of those developers that are untracked, right? And it's like, okay, so this is why we're here. We want to take care of them. Then you can establish why it's important, right? Once you can get alignment on what you are doing, why it's important, and everybody can agree on those two things, you can now start to talk about what success would look like, because it's clear how you would go from where you are to what needs to be done because you've established that already. So it's not a matter of, oh, this is what everybody wants. Not everybody is going to want what you want. I can tell you that firsthand. If you expect that to
True.
happen, you might be disappointed because different teams have different velocities in terms of execution based on what's important to them. Teams like the sales team, teams like product, for example, tend to move faster than teams that are more risk adverse or they are more back office. So those kind of teams tend to take time to structure things and put things in place. And you're like, oh, we need to do this thing fast. It's like, no, no, that's not going to happen. But establishing this is what we need to do. This is why it's important. Once everybody gets that, there's going to be conversations in between. Oh, you are saying this is important to us. It's not important to me. Oh, this is why it's important to you, right? You need to think about it this way. You need to think about it that way. This is why this works. This is why we need to do this. And as soon as everybody is like, yes, we're on the same page, put it down in writing. Like either you set up a group, put the main points there. So everybody can always come back to refer to this is why we are doing this in the first place. So
So I like
that's why I said like buying is very, very critical.
setting up a baseline of why are we here is really helpful. It's like a helpful model to say, okay, at least even if you don't agree, you sort of understand that that's really why we're here, and that makes
Yeah.
more sense. Everybody can actually just. There's something that Jeff Bezos would say that you don't have to agree, but you can sort of understand that, hey, this is the right. Was it like agree and comply? Something in that like that. Oh, this is. It makes sense that this is how it is. You get, and this is the direction that we're taking, and you just have to see it through. The other thing that you mentioned, which is really odd for engineers, I'm sure WC was like nodding her head, was, oh, you guys, you document. That's interesting.
Yeah, yeah, you like I well, from my own experience, I was lucky to work with managers that were big on documentation, right? Everybody cannot be in your head. That's what we would say. Everybody cannot be in your head. How do we see what you mean? Just put it down. Either you put it down as a normal document or make it a presentation deck that people can review later. But it has to be somewhere. And if you have an idea and you discuss it with someone and you're able to like get a bit of validation, put it down somewhere so you don't forget.
Awesome. If someone is looking at listening now and he's interested in joining the developer experience team, what would be maybe your top three things in terms of an advice that you would give the person prior to um, applying or sending you a DM? What would convince you that, oh, this person is the right fit for, will I say, this department?
So I think the first and basic thing is you need to know a lot about the product or be willing to learn about the product, right? You can help people think about how they would better interact with your product, how they would better use the product technically if you do not know anything about the product. So that's a good place to start. These are base use cases. These are edge use cases. These are popular use cases. These are new ways developers can think about using this, right? And then when you have that down, another thing that would help you would be to develop empathy, which is the hard side of developer experience because developers want to move fast. A lot of them are not necessarily kind with their words. And I get it, they're angry, they're stressed, they're working multiple tasks. PMs are on their neck, QA is pushing back their work to say they missed one
PMs on
test
their
case,
neck, highlighted.
right? So so it's understandable that these guys are not necessarily the easiest guys to work with, but you have to be patient, you have to be very empathetic. You need to Some people say you need to be an engineer, right? I've had people who were product people transition into developer experience, not necessarily engineers, but you need to understand what they are going through, right? You need to be empathetic to their plight. This guy has a lot riding on the integration to my product. This guy has a lot riding on this. This guy has a lot riding on that. He's angry. He has every right to be angry. Irrespective of what he says, my focus is how do I help, right? Irrespective of what anybody's saying about my product, what anybody's saying about my features, anything. My focus when I'm talking to a developer is how do I help this guy in front of me right now to get what he needs to do done? So that's the second thing, empathy. And the third thing, which for me is a big add on, well, there are two things, but let me squeeze both of them in, right? Is curiosity and the ability to take initiative. You cannot do DX well if you wait and you're reactive, right? You need to proactively talk to people that are done integrating, right? How is the experience post that? What are they doing now? What are they thinking about? How can they, see themselves use new products that have come out from your firm, but they are not using? How can they encourage someone who is trying to go through the same process that they've gone through? How can they come in to engage with more people? on your platform, right? Those kind of things. You need to be able to take initiatives. You need to be able to say, hey, we need to do this, get this done. Okay, nobody's going to support me. How do I do this in a very small scale? And you need to be curious. What's new? What are developers talking about today? Okay, I'm a node developer. What's the latest thing? What are people thinking about today? What could possibly change tomorrow? Right. And these things would help you, create better experiences, come up with better advices for your developers, come up with better tooling for them. It will help you help them, basically.
I think it makes sense. Like I always mention that you have to be hungry for the product. Like if someone comes into an interview really prepared, you will know. Like if someone is telling you that, oh, this is how the product will work in this particular use case, and that's
Yeah.
why she's there, because she wants to see how Flutterwave works in what do you call it, in hospitality businesses, and she's very detailed about that. So you'd be like, huh, this is interesting, and you have to really be empathetic and I get the aspect of you saying that developers are really quick, like they want to just get things done, what's the next level. But when you're trying to sort of solve someone's problem, you only want to hear them talk, and sometimes they can be very expressive in how they
Yeah.
in how they're talking. So you really want to really listen and be there to provide a solution. And we even noticed it because when we spoke to you concerning some developments with Flutterwave, it was different talking to you because I think that was interesting. Like you really wanted to solve our problem, so you were asking us really intentional questions. Like, okay, what are you trying to achieve? How are you going to get to this point? Okay, let's see how we can move around this and get to it. Okay, let me connect you to this person that will solve this particular issue for you. So you really have to be very empathetic in that level. And the last thing you mentioned, which is initiative, sometimes resources might not be there
Yeah.
to solve all the issues that you have. So you really have to think outside the box and sort of get things rolling on your angle. So you need someone that is very quick on their feet and can be able to look at a particular situation and essentially provide those results that you need, regardless of resources that are available. I'm piggybacking on what you mentioned earlier, which is around documenting. Those are like best practices that people or that you have actually introduced or you've used on your own side. Are there other things like best practices that someone in developer experience should be leveraging? And how do you even document? Like, what does that look like? Like, how does Cornelius
Just right.
documentation look like? Just like
I mean,
writes like an
I,
article.
so this is what I tell people on my team. If you're looking for best practice or you're looking for a template or you're looking for this, you'll be disappointed because that will take more time. A lot of
Mm,
things that could have been put down, forgotten them. What you just need to do is write what is in your head, right?
mm,
Although over time I've been able to like structure how I write, like, okay, this is the intro, this is what I'm trying to do, then this is everything else.
everything else.
Later on, I can come and read and like regroup based on the context. Everything here speaks to this, so these three should be together. Everything here speaks to this. This idea at the end should not be at the end, it should come to the middle, right? Those will be reviewed later, but when you want to document, the best thing to do is to write. Over time, you will find what works for you as you review your documents. You would see other people's documents that would inspire you, and that would also influence your style of documenting things internally. Start, review frequently. Over time, you come up with your own sort of best practice.
Aside from the best practice, are there ways that I know that I know the answer to this question for the enough, but are there ways that you keep yourself motivated, to keep moving aside from a 20 million naira check? Check. How do you keep yourself motivated to say, okay, this is a new day? What keeps you going?
I think for me, having really having a really clear idea of what matters to me is what motivates me, especially in this role, right? Of course, officially, what we have as what success means to the team might be different from what I really consider successful. But I really just wake up and I think about, okay, this kind of developer that has his dream and wants to use us, use my technology, use the team's technology to get things done. What would he feel like when he's able to achieve his dream? And I run with that, right? I use that energy to go and drag people to get them like to see what I need them to do. I use that energy to communicate to my team members, explain things, even when things are not like necessarily convenient for me and I need to jump on calls, get things done. That picture is what I have in mind, right? The feeling of that satisfied, fulfilled developer. So that's what gets me going. There are days where it's challenging, the end of the issues are not in sight, but it's like, right now, what can I do for this person? What can I do for the next person? What can I do for the person after? And I consider like work like a game. You never finish the game. You play to a level, then you pause, you go and sleep, you wake up, you hit resume, and you continue playing, right? So that that's what I would say motivates me, because it's kind of a subset of the overall vision that we have, which is like, okay, connect Africans, connect everyone's payment systems and all of that. But it's like, how do we do that with ease and make people feel at ease doing that, make people feel very confident to the extent where they can now start dreaming about things. Oh, I have this dream, I want to do X, I want to do Y, I want to do Z. So everyone is like, there's a dreamer out there. How do we make sure he doesn't end up looking for oil and gas role like me?
That's really cool. That's actually very cool. I really like that you mentioned, or like just listening to you, I think I can pick like two traits or two skills that you really have, which is having a curious mind and getting shit done. And getting shit done can be really hard, like can be really hard. So I'm just like, how did you think about it as a game? Because I like playing games. And to be very honest, that was a very interesting way to looking at things. Now, speaking of people that are dreamers right now, so imagine a founder, and I think you have that a lot in Nigeria, a founder who has a dream but has zero technical skill, like absolutely zero technical skill. How would you, like, should I say, guide such a person to a path of bringing this dream to life? Like, whether it is, should the person go and set up an entire team? But what if the person does not have 20 million naira to hire anybody? So let's go for it from two case scenario. In his first case is you are a founder, you have zero technical skill, and you don't also have money, but also a or little to no money to hire a technical team. Or you're a founder, you have the money, but you don't even know how to set up a team. So I think that's like a question that has always been in my mind to hear from an engineering team.
So what I would say is solve the problem, right? And this is one thing my manager and myself used to banter about, which is any problem that you cannot solve with a spreadsheet first, like you cannot
Mm.
break things down and say, this is how I intend to solve the problem, this is how the solution will work. Bringing technology into it is only going to make matters worse. And a lot of founders don't recognize that you actually need to solve the problem before you implement the solution. Now, technology is how you get that solution and make it available to a lot of people at scale. That's where the technology part comes into it. But as a founder, solve the problem first, right? I want to, let me use your team as an example. I want to play in this space, and this is the value I want to provide. How do I provide that value? Forget code. How am I going to get this? Let's say I had all the resources in the world. What would that look like? Okay, if I have a constraint here, what would the solution look like? If I have a constraint here, what would the solution look like? And thinking through this is something that you cannot really do alone. You would need to do it in conjunction with whosoever considers your product valuable, so your users. Talk to the users. You don't need a technical team to talk to your users. You have this problem. Okay, if I give you a solution for this problem, but you're going to pay ₦1 million a month, does that make sense to you? No. Okay, I'm coming back. Then you go, you tweak the solution, you come back again. Does this make sense? No. And by involving them, you already have a solution that you can start manually on a small scale, right? It makes more sense, and I know it might be contradictory. It makes more sense for you to start small scale manually for one customer to really understand the solution you're building. So when you're talking to the technical person, you can describe in a lot of details what needs to be done. And all that technical person is doing is he's making it available at scale to a lot of people like that user who are not there. So that's what I would advise. Now, when you've gotten through that, the next thing you need to do is you need to find a technical co-founder, right? This is somebody that you need to trust. Of course, it's not going to get paid early, so that handles the money part. You trust him, and then he has enough experience in that field. So when I say that field, everybody can be a developer, but you still need domain knowledge. For example, I might be a great developer experience engineer in fintech. I might be able to do data analysis to some extent based on the data I access and I track, but I cannot do that kind of data analysis in sports management. It's not the same. I don't know physical sciences that I would say I want to go there. What am I doing there? Right. So it might be difficult for you to find someone that has the exact match of domain knowledge and the technical knowledge. But get someone that knows enough about your domain. Okay, this is how my domain works. This is how real estate works. This is how logistics works. And then he understands the technical side. So when you are explaining the solution that you've come up with to him, he can run with the solution, come up with edge cases for those solutions, and make sure the product is really fantastic. By doing these two things, you already have a customer that you're working with. You can scale from that customer to 2 to 3, depending the time you're developing the product. And what happens when you are done is you can say, oh, we've had these 3 customers work with us, and use that to acquire more customers. And you already have a product with the same experience, but now at scale. So that's what I would advise founders to just think about. And a lot of founders, I need to mention this, right? A lot of founders would have a brilliant idea, but they would not validate, they would not think through the solution and hand off these responsibilities to the tech guy. Now, you are limiting the tech guy to his own experience and what he can do. So if the tech guy does not have domain knowledge about your product, if the product fails, it's not exactly his fault because he's doing what he knows how to do. You are the founder who has the idea, who, you have a bit of knowledge about the domain that you want to play in. So you should be the one that should work with your customers to really figure out what that solution looks like. And sometimes you'll be surprised that the solutions will be very, very basic and simple because the person who builds them is not technical. And that's the beauty of good products. A lot of good products are very basic at the core. Just order from this guy, he comes, he picks you, you pay after. Basic. So, yeah, that's what I would just advise any of my founder friends to do.
To be very honest, you're so right. Like, we've had somebody say the same thing where Roger has said the same thing. You have to manually do what you need to do, document that and build, because having to, like, it's easier to change things when they are manual. So for example, when you want to, how you said this delivery guy, take this delivery thing and build it here and stuff. If you just start from building the product, you're already thinking about, oh, how many people, how would it look like if there are so many people here, what exactly, what should the user see, what should the user be able to filter, what should the user be able to do. Sorry, I entirely built that in my head right now. So you're already going through that entire space when, to be very honest, somebody just wants to be able to say, I want to deliver and this, right? So that really helps you to really know the user. But my question would now be, oh, the product is now they've tested it, they've done the background. But how do you now build an effective tech team, right? What does an and this might be tricky, but what does an effective tech team look like from your standpoint as an engineer or a developer experience?
So generally, as an engineer, an effective tech team will be a team that supports the broader team get the objective done. So it depends on their objective. Do we want to build a product? Here's the product. That's what
Mm.
an effective tech team will do. Now, in comparison, how effective different teams will now be, especially if they are all supporting products, would be how quickly can we deliver this quality for the product? How visible is the process to all the stakeholders involved? Those are nuances, right? But generally speaking, across board, any team that is unable to support their core teams to achieve the objective, they are not effective. I don't care what they are doing, I don't care how fancy they are not effective, right? So, what you want to do as an engineer is to come in and really understand what needs to be done, either from the business side, from the product side, and all of that, and say, this is how we would approach it based on what you've explained. These are possible timelines. And in terms of hiring, one good rule of thumb is you do the work till it is too much for only you to do it in a timely manner and produce the same quality. Then you hire someone who has the skill sets to do that same quality of work in the same time frame. And both of you continue till it is too much for the both of you, then you hire. If you go this route, what you would notice would happen is hiring at the beginning will be very, very slow until you're getting close to like, oh, we need to scale, we need to get this to more customers. Then you need more engineers who can come out. Oh, yeah, we need to quickly scale for like 10,000 customers. How do we do that? And then you have a team to do it.
If we take this thing to Twitter, are you sure they will not drag us for do it until you're tired? People don't believe that you should be tired though. People feel like you should
So
just hire upfront. Like,
the reason why you don't want to hire upfront is which would you rather have? I hire
hmm,
upfront and I realize I don't need you. I need to fire you, or I utilize all my engineers. And that's what's happening in tech today. Hire upfront. I'm not dragging any company, but we can see what's happening in the industry. But if you hire what you need, fine, they will say, and the culture, too much workload, it's toxic. Yes, right. But you need to understand that utilization is key in engineering. It's just like saying equipments. You need to also factor in equipments that will be used by those guys because you're not
hmm,
just hiring people. You need to pay for equipment, you need to pay for tools, you need to pay for access. And if these guys are not being utilized, you're just wasting money on all those things. So it's not just the person here you need to think about. You also need to think about every other thing that will make the person successful in supporting the original objective. So that's the reason why
yes.
we go with the model of one person till, oh, this is my bandwidth. And when I mean the person is tired, if the person is saying, I'm doing 9 to 6, in 9 to 6, based on what you can get done in 9 to 6, are you able to deliver this workload and this quality? No. So you are your bandwidth. You've hit your bandwidth. Let's get another person. Both of you will work till you hit your bandwidth. Then we'll get another
Hmm,
person. So we'll increase as needed. And I can justify to every stakeholder, this is why we need this guy, or this is why we need this babe. This is why we need whosoever is coming in here. Because we've gotten to the point where we can't move forward without this, right?
hmm.
And then you are now able to predict your expenses, because that's also very important in engineering. Engineering costs, if you close your eyes like this, open it and you're not careful, just out of here, and dollar is not playing.
Yeah. Jam is already looking because it's always like, you people, why are we spending this amount of money? Why do we have to spend this amount of money? And I honestly think you're so right. You're so spot on with this ingredient for hiring. Like if you hire upfront, to be very honest, sometimes the team is so heavy with very little results because managing people can be a lot. Like managing people can be a lot. And And I think that's the next question or next discussion I would like talk about is we have seen Flutterwave as a smaller team and you have seen Flutterwave now that you guys are a unicorn. What does that look like and what are the common challenges that come with a really large scaled business and how would you advise to solve those problems?
So I think the easiest one to point out is familiarity. Like when you are small, you know everybody, everybody's your guy. You know, you are turning up for everybody's weddings. But now it's like, I when did you join us? I didn't know. Sorry. Nice to meet you. So it kind of is different because now there's a lot more people. You have to build rapport from scratch. Not saying there's anything wrong with that. That's absolutely fine. But it's not the way it was like when you just walk into the office and you're like, my guy, no go chop, that kind of thing. Right. So that's one major
True.
difference. I think another major difference for me in terms of sheer scale is the fact that now I need to understand what each team is doing and what their focus is doing, or what their focus is rather, pardon me, before I can like kind of engage fully. So an example would be, let's say a new team was created from a team I used to engage with, and that team is doing absolutely nothing related to what I need. I would first need to understand, oh, this is what this team is doing. Okay, I don't need to reach out. And that's more time on my part. But generally, in terms of like what the culture will be, I mean, culture is just a sum of people's behaviors. It's obviously going to change. You have more people, so you have more dynamics to consider. But the major change will just be that familiarity. A lot more people to build that rapport with, build trust with. And yeah, because not everybody is in the same space, right? Because of the sheer size, there are some kind of conversations that you miss out on. And you're like, why didn't you guys gist me about this thing? Right. So yeah.
That's actually true. I think the familiarity. So there was one day, just a quick there was one day I came to stand up and I saw the number of people on our stand up. I'm like, why this was my lord? Okay, hi everyone. Even if I was part of the hiring process, so it's like, okay, now my lord. So that actually is a thing. But how do you keep the quality of the work? Because the more people, some people can really relax. How do you really keep the quality and ensure that you're still delivering as expected?
So goes back to documentation, but this time around it's what you document. The objective of the
Mm,
team has to be clear, right? I keep saying something to everyone that works with me, right? Every team has to be unique in objective. Two teams
mm,
should not be doing the same thing, right? Ideally, every team is unique. We understand what we are here for, we understand what we're trying to achieve. Then we have established processes. Now, those processes are things that you onboard people to so that they start to contribute value to the team as quickly as they can. So, establishing processes, and honestly, this is feedback, right? A lot of Nigerian companies struggle with this. And that's why it's really difficult for them to like really scale because sometimes you are thinking about what if this process doesn't work? How can we tweak it? Create a process to tweak your process. That's how you tweak
mm,
it, right? But just having that baseline set of processes that can help is going to help prevent a lot of issues with quality.
mm,
Because when you say
mm,
quality, we have to agree at the beginning that this is what we are doing, these are the metrics we are using, these are the standards that we're using. And then there is a process to ensure that we meet those standards.
mm.
Anybody that comes
That's
into the team, hey, welcome, nice to meet you. So this is how we do things here. This is why it matters. This is this. We onboard you on that, and then you're able to run with the vision.
There's a common thing that we see at Kebo, which is culture is really not what you say, but really what you do. And I think that that's actually really spot on to ensure that like at the forefront, you're just like, this is how we deliver things. And when they are not working, you're building an entire system to just really change it and make it really get better. I think that's really good. So my question is, what does culture look like at Flutter? What does the culture look like? How is it like? Um, and are you guys very big on culture?
We are big on culture, right? but I'm not sure I'm the right person to speak about culture because my head is usually in the clouds. I'm a dreamer, right? If my head
Fair
is not in the
enough.
cloud, if my head is not in the cloud, I'm not engaging people. I'll most likely just be catching up with friends at work to find out what they've been up to, what changes has happened. So I'm not sure I'm the right person to even like, explain culture and all of that. But what I would say is the firm is big on culture. We pride ourselves in being able to deliver quality in a short period of time, right? That comes with its own unique set of challenges, right? I'm sure, but we have our ways around those challenges. For me and the team that I really work closely with, I think we're still kind of a tight knit group. We don't call ourselves a family, of course, because family fights, but we find our way around fights. But yeah, we're still a tight knit group. We still check in on each other, make sure that we're still supporting each other's objectives. Nobody is dragging anybody behind, and we're very open with feedback. I think that's one thing that really helps us. Like everybody's able to share feedback with me. I'm able to share feedback with other people's teams to say, hey, I think you can help me do XYZ. I think we can do XYZ better from your point of view. What do you think? And we'll just bounce ideas off each other. So yeah, culture wise, that's all I can say. When my heads are not in the clouds, this is my reality, especially with the people that I work.
That's actually that's fair. That's fair. It's understandable. Sometimes I wonder how your head like what you're thinking about part time. That would be a different conversation for another day. Because you said something at the start of the conversation about how you had a conversation with somebody and the person just really showed you about how oil and gas is really not exactly the way to go. So my question would be for somebody looking to start their career, maybe in tech, but maybe let me just streamline it to dev experience. What would you really think they should consider? Again, there's a lot of buzz with do tech, do tech, do tech, do tech, right? But really, what would the conversation with the person look like, and how would you tell the person to navigate it?
So if I were to advise myself about tech, I think I would start with the reality of tech, which is it takes time, right? Good things take time. And of course, you would hear stories of someone who got into tech in 6 months, got a really decent remote role. That's cool. But on average, not just in Nigeria, like globally, a lot of people that get to the places we want to get to, they took their time. They started at the bottom, built up their careers, networked properly, worked on projects, upskilled. They were able to adapt to change and all those things. And this takes time. So money cannot be your only motivation for doing tech. You need to find out why you are doing tech. Let's say tech is no longer hot. Would you still want to do tech? And if you wanted to do tech, why would you want to do that? So finding your North Star in tech is something that is very, very important. Now, when you find it, you also need to find which industry you want to practice tech in. I know Nigeria we might be biased to fintech because that's one of the more developed industries. But there are a lot of emerging industries that would require tech. For example, I was chatting with a friend, we're chatting about AR. AR is going to be very incredible and it's going to be very valuable in telemedicine next couple of years, right? So it's what industry do I want to practice my tech in? What industry is compatible with me as a person? There are some people that, yeah, they might work in fintech, and in fintech, they're not doing a lot of like financing. I said financing. They're not doing a lot of financial work, but once they start to proceed to the top and they are now involved in talks around like compliance or complex security, or they are thinking about distributed payments, then it becomes a head scratcher for them. It's like, am I in the right place? You understand? So you don't want that to happen to you. You want to pick an industry that you feel you like, you're passionate about, And then before you get into the industry, find someone who you think would be a good mentor, right? My people say follow Uno road. It's very, very important that you have someone that feels like you are the next big thing. Someone who can invest a bit of time to tell you, oh, this thing you are doing, don't do it like this. Don't go this way. Don't go that way. And with these three things, you can now start working on yourself, the basics, putting together a good use case for why you should join any team, right? I really don't like when I attend interviews and the person's telling me, oh, I did this, I did that, I did this. And it's like, what's the most exciting problem you've solved for yourself? And you can't tell me any problem you've solved for yourself or for people you care about. It's like, make a more solid case for yourself. So, do you want to solve problems for yourself? Solve them. Nobody's holding you. It's the same code. I mean, it's the same code. Just build things. Aside building things, find out what will make you a value add. Do you need to learn presentation skills? Do you need to learn documentation? Do you need to learn how to translate business requirements into technical requirements? What will make you a value add in a specific place? Then you can start working on those things for yourself. So these four things are what I would have told myself looking back, like, Cornelius, you need to do these things. And in a matter of time, right? If you do those four things, you would always find a role. Always, right? Because everybody wants to work with someone who is competent. That's the idea. If you are competent, whether you are white, you're black, you're a woman, you're a man, nobody gives two shits. Everybody wants to work with competent. I'm not kidding. Everybody wants to work with competent people. So build that competency, anchor yourself, know that the money would come, but it might take a while. Anchor yourself. You are doing this for the long run. Find an industry you can learn about, build domain knowledge. Find someone that can guide you, that you can ask really detailed questions and can give you insights. And then work on building competency for yourself. You'll be fine.
Hmm, that's actually so good. I have a sub question to your answer. So, people always say, don't ask people to be their mentor. Don't say, I want to be your mentor. I want to be your mentor, right? If somebody, for example, has been seeing your work and really wants you to mentor them so they can ask you deep questions, how should they go about?
Okay. Let me answer this with a story of how I got my mentor. Right. So, first time I met this guy, I was at an event. I went up to him, asked him questions. He was answering everybody's questions. He left. Oh, can we keep in touch? Yeah, sure. Key side note, if someone tells you, oh, we can keep in touch, yeah, sure, and they don't give you their contacts, they don't want you to keep in touch. That's what. So a couple of years later, I built competency. The next time I reached out to him, it was just congrats on this. You're doing this at
Mm,
work. It's really fantastic. Congrats on this. Then the conversation started evolving to things like, so you are working in this. I am assuming that you'll be doing X, Y, Z. How do you think this can help you get this done? I built this, right? Or I spoke on a panel that discussed this. We spoke about these things. How do you think these things can help you? And over time, it was more around how I can support him, how I can bring value to him, basically, right? It was more around, these are some things I'm working on. These are some things some of my guys are working on. Someone in my contact just shared this with me. I think you should give it a look. And he was the one that came himself to say, this guy, what are you doing? What exactly are you doing? And I'm like, oh, I'm a Flutterwave. I am an engineer and this. What do you want? And over time, it became a two-way communication, right? That was stable. And even at that then, I did not ask him to become a mentor. I made him invested in my success. And that's one thing people need to do, right? If I want you to be invested in my success, I would ask you a question that I need. I would use it and I'll go and write LinkedIn article to say, oh, I've been working on this, I've been struggling with this, I was successful in doing XYZ. This would not have been possible without this guy. The next time I come to ask a question, you're answering me because
Yes.
somewhere in your mind you believe the information I give him is yielding results. And then from there, you are now going to be willing to invest more things, not just your time. You start to invest access to your network. And then if I make good use of that, who knows, you might
I'm
invest
going to
if I
steal
choose
this.
to other
I'm
things,
going to
maybe
steal
join
this.
seed round. But that's basically the way I would approach getting mentors. Look for someone that number one, you know has gone through the path that you want to go through. Don't go and look for someone that is not in your field and say you should come and mentor you because the person is the head of World Bank and the person is Nigerian. This is just going to look at you like, what's this? I don't see. But the person must be able to look at you and see like a younger version. At least in my case, a younger version. You show a bit of interest in the person and the person's well-being, right? And then when the person is engaging you, you try to get the person invested in. Ask key questions that you know you need. Don't waste it. One or two questions are good enough. And then when you use it, come back, appreciate the person, repeat the cycle. Person will get more invested and more invested. In fact, mentors will not tell you they are mentors until much later. They're like, this guy, what are we? And it's like, oh, I don't know. Okay, can you mentor me, sir? Oh, yes. What have I been doing all these years? Right. So, really, really key. You have to be the intentional person in the relation. That's what I'll just say.
Two people that I'm going to use this one, and I'm going to tag you on LinkedIn after I'm done using this tip. So
Yes, I'm
what
going to tag you
why
too. Just letting you know.
we're starting to wind down. But just as you said, like, and I think that this is something that, like, I don't like to use the word this generation because it sounds very big. I'm like, why do I have? I feel like let me just humble myself and say, I think most people need to actually learn that be valuable first. Don't just like hearing be my mentor can be a lot. And also like something you said, try to help. Like big people need like quote unquote big people still need help. They still need help, right? So just try to say, oh, can I help with this? Can I help with that? Can I like let the person just see that this person just cares about you. Okay, what exactly
Yeah.
are you going through and stuff like that? That is so good. Then, by the way, if you Cornelius is ever going to interview you, he shared some pro tips. Listen to this podcast and get those pro tips. So the question I have would now be what's something very interesting you have built for yourself? Like you said you were going to ask the person. So let me ask you too. Like GB, what's that thing that you have built for yourself that you absolutely love?
I think what I'm currently working on is one of the most interesting things. So I've been dabbling with AI for a while. I'm trying to export some of my chat data and train a model that's going to power an assistant. So the assistant is just going to help me prioritize my chats. I get anxious when I see a lot of messages. So it just tells me which one I need to respond to urgently and which ones I can just ignore and just hit read all on them. So that's something that I'm working on. But like in the past, I have done a lot of scheduling and automations for myself, especially around things like, okay, how do I balance money between all these obligations now? Which ones do I need to do first? And then it just lets me know, oh, you've not done this. You still need to do this. So, yeah, most of the things that I build are usually automations around my own life. And I don't think I've sat down to say, okay, I want to document or share them. It's just this thing is frustrating me. I build an automation around it, post it somewhere. Once it solves the problem for a while, and I build a really good habit around that solution that I don't necessarily need the solution. I can take it down and then host another solution.
You have a builder's mindset. You will definitely have a builder's mindset. This is something myself and Jam always just joke about where we're just like, I want to build something. I want to build something for myself. By the way, when you build your AI, when you host it, I think Jam will be the first person to pay for it because he also has, I don't even know, he and his chat, they are not, they are not friendly at all. So that's actually really good.
I don't blame you. I don't blame you.
Even after
On
I post it, I don't think I'll be sharing it outside because these applications don't have like security component. There's nothing like login or anything. I don't have time for that. It's just
chat,
it's me.
you're
And I
literally
just
building like that. You're chatting now can raise like $100 million easily in San Francisco, and you're saying,
Are you already thinking about the revenue? You always
uh,
revenue everywhere. Said I'm sitting a system.
uh, yeah, it's good. So
right. So one thing I wanted to also mention, I think back on the mentor conversation was that everybody needs help, yeah, but they're not going to accept all the help offers they get. So you need to start like with something small that's like, what's the risk in accepting this? It's really minimal. I can accept it and gradually increase how much help you're willing to offer. Because I mean, if you just approach someone like Jam and you're like, Jam, I know you are stressed with managing all the accounts. Let me come and manage it for you. Jam is going to look at you like, what are you talking about? So you start with something small and then gradually increase how much help you're willing to offer. Sometimes it might just be like volunteering to support them on an event or just showing up to the event, giving them general feedback. Say, hey, really loved what you spoke about this. But like from a beginner's point of view, I really didn't understand this. Maybe you can write an article to explain this for beginners like me. That sort of thing.
I'm going to steal that, to be honest. Like I have a couple of people that I speak to, and I've not publicly actually pushed them and say, "Oh, thank you," and sort of because and I know that they will like that. Funny enough, like on LinkedIn, they'll eat that thing up. So I'm going to do that. That is fantastic. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
So we are the light up session now. So this is where we ask really fun questions and sort of get your feedback on them. The first question
Hmm.
is: are there markets or ideas that you're currently excited about right
Markets or ideas. So full disclosure, I like money. Very full disclosure.
now? 100%.
I think one thing that is making me excited right now would be AI and the revenues or the potential revenues rather that it can provide for people, especially people who don't have access to a lot of resources. Right. I think AI is going to be the great leveler, but not for everybody, but for a large amount of people. One market excites me. I'm very bullish about Nigeria. Believe in Nigeria, right? I know
Oh wow!
I know a lot
Look at
of people
this
might
face.
not I know a lot of people might not see things the same way, but I just think Nigeria has what it takes to claw from where it is and you know get up there. So market wise, I think Nigeria is one market I'm bullish about. Maybe because I have most of my information about this country, right? As a market, economic information, and all those things. But it's still my country, and I still believe we can get a lot of things done. Adibisi is just shaking her head.
This is just
She's just judging me quietly.
I said
okay. That's interesting, actually. Outside of work,
super interesting. You mean?
interesting. Outside of work, what's your favorite thing to do?
Sleep.
Sleep. 100%. I agree.
Yeah, like very straight. Work has taken different forms these days. So any chance I get to sleep, I sleep.
There was a time you just finished your leave, and I asked you the same question. You're just like, the best times of my leave was probably when I slept.
Just sleep, man.
This just shows that both of you don't sleep because anybody that says their favorite thing to do is sleep means they don't sleep. But okay, no comment. No comment.
Lord,
Favorite movie right now?
it's a hard one. don't see a lot of movies, but
It can be something you have seen before. It can be like Tom and Jerry. It can be like Home Alone.
I know those ones are like old movies. I'm trying to think of a movie that I saw this year. I don't think I've seen a movie this. Okay, I saw one this weekend. Let's just say Atlas, because that's the only one I can remember, honestly.
I
Hmm.
think I should even watch that. Love what you're saying.
Yeah, sure.
Favorite song. So we have a Spotify playlist that
Oh,
our guests can populate. So we'll share it with you as well. But what's your favorite song? You can mention maybe your top three, top two, or just one.
okay. So top three, I think. Sorry, let me open my Spotify. They're like
Yeah.
pinned on Spotify.
Hmm. Cool.
So I think Greatest, called out music, Greatest is my number
Mm.
one. Then
Yay.
Eternal by Nosa. And I'm torn about the third one. I'm torn between The Future, the one that Dunsin Oyekan did with a lot of collabs, and what's this AO's Love Conditional or something like that, AO's song. So those are like my top three, or top combined three ish.
We're going to add that to our list so that more people. That list is going to really be a very diverse list of songs.
I think Cornelius just took the list like this. He just
We
turned
have
it.
punk rock actually. We have punk rock in this where everybody is
Oh
really
wow.
interested.
Eh?
And
Eh?
imagine this going from punk rock to listening to Jesus.
All time favorite,
Oh, sorry?
all time favorite books right now.
I have joint favorites. It's hard to pick one.
Okay, maybe top two. Maybe we could do that.
Okay, so there's this book, How to Get from Where You Are to Where You Want to Be. That's a solid book. It's always close by. I'm looking at it under my table right now. It's always close by. If I'm traveling, I travel with it. I don't go anywhere without it. There is a historical book that my mom gifted me as a kid. I haven't found where to get like a new copy. So the copy I have is torn. So it basically covers like the history of mathematics to a large extent. So it's makers of mathematics. That's the second one. Then the third one is the Bible. So those are my there's one I'm reading currently. I've not had time to finish it. How to influence people, how to make friends and influence people. That's an interesting read. Like, I think it's a favorite, but all-time favorite because I've not finished reading it. I don't know if I can add it to joint favorites yet.
Can't believe you have a book on the history of mathematics. That's
I have random books, like just very, very random books.
um,
Random. I wonder
interesting.
how you even read them because you're always in the clouds. Like when do you ascend to read them?
I mean, anytime I'm on the road, I'm in transit, I do two things in transit. So either I'm asleep or I'm reading, one of the two. I also read every morning deliberately before I start working. So it's like I
Hmm.
wake up, I have a pre-morning ritual where even if it's an emergency, unless my manager's like, you need to get on this call, I'm not going to join the call, right? Because I know I'm not going to get a chance to do that. Then reading is part of like my morning ritual. I need to read, read my newsletters and all of that before I start working. So that way, when I'm in the clouds, I'm in the clouds. Nobody's disturbing me in the clouds.
Question is, what's the best advice you've
That's another hard question. Like, there's so many advices that have become like part of my guides as I do things. But I think the most influential one would be to always remember who I am, right? That has been one of the more practical advices I've gotten ever.
For some
I'll tell you
very odd
mine.
reason. Go, go,
Sorry?
go.
Why? For the way others, what happened?
I translated that in Yoruba because that's something my daddy always says. So the
Uh,
Yoruba version of it just felt very, it felt very deep. So yeah.
Oh, Actually, BC has nothing to do with like the Yoruba version of, oh, remember the son. This is not son of who you are. Oh. It's remember who, because like one thing growing up that my dad pointed out was a lot of people will not find themselves till like, they're married, they already have kids, and it becomes even difficult for them to really define themselves. So it was like, okay, find yourself early, and when you find yourself, never forget who you
You know,
Yes,
are. Right.
that's a really big way.
no,
Before we
let me
end, I
share
wanted to
you.
tell you the 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 most impactful life advice I've gotten was from an investor. He told us
Wow.
do everything to stay alive.
Staying alive is very, very, very important, my brother.
Stay alive
That's
and eat well.
uh,
Eat well, stay alive. You're good.
every other thing will be sorted.
That will be fine. Oh my goodness. Thank you so much, Cornelius. Really appreciate the time.
Sure,
Thank you
sure.
for joining. I learned a lot. I'm sure Davis learned a lot as well.
Yes, I
Thank you if
did.
you're listening for the first time. This is the Angry Money Pod. We actually push out episode twice a month, and this episode is one of them. Really appreciate the time. If you reached here, thank you so much for listening. Please subscribe, please like, please follow us on social media. We're everywhere. We'll also add the show notes of this pod to the description, so you can follow Colenius wherever he is. If he's in the cloud, you can find him there. Yeah. So
I don't think you'll find him there. There's too many
thank you so
servers.
much.
Yes, yes.
Bye, everyone.